Hello, my yarny friends. I'm Sara Sach. Welcome back to my crochet channel. Now, today's video, I'm going to show you how to make the January garnet Afghan or granny square. It can also be called a crochet square. And so what we're going to be doing is back in 2017, I did 12 granny squares, one for each month, that were 6 inches. And what we're going to do is retest those 12 granny squares and refilm one each month. And I really suggest that you make 2 of each of the squares. That way you'll have enough to make a blanket maybe or a bag or something. But there'll be 1 square each month. Each square will represent the birthstone of that month. And then each square will also be 6 inches. All right. Now, if you've done these in the past, they're going to be a little bit different than the original 12 squares. So we'll be doing updates for the pattern, new video, and new pictures. All right. So this is our January square. We're calling it the January Garnet Afghan square. Now, these squares can be called a crochet square, a granny square, or an Afghan square. I like to call them Afghan if they're not the traditional granny squares, but it really doesn't matter what you call them. They're just a lot of fun to make, and we can learn lots of new techniques doing these. You can see this one has a little bit of a flower to begin with, and the flower shape, it's almost a fillet style flower. And then, of course, we end with our granny style and a trim of single crochet. And we will be trimming each square with a row of single crochet. Also, you'll notice that I have this on a blocking board. And we'll talk more about the blocking board and how to do this at the end of today's video, okay? It's just something I recommend so that when you go to put your squares together, you have nice, crisp squares. You don't have to block, and if you're not one who likes to block, then you don't have to. All right, so I'll tell you all about that at the end of today's video. Now, you will find down in the notes a brand new pattern that's been tested with brand new pictures. So for our January garnet square, I'm going to be using this yarn. This is a medium weight number 4 yarn. It is Red Heart with Love, so it's a softer yarn. Medium weight number 4, and the color is garnet. I've had it for a few years, so you may have to look it up if you want this exact yarn. But I originally bought it at Walmart, so any red, or you don't have to make them the color that I make. This would be beautiful in lavender or pink, green, whatever color that you want to make. I'm just corresponding them with the monthly birthstone. All right. And I do recommend that you make 2 of the 6-inch squares each month or more, so you have enough to make maybe a blanket. We're going to be stitching with our H hook. I almost said I, not I, H. 5 millimeter. And then you just need a needle to weave in your ends and a pair of scissors. Now, all the squares are going to be different colors, and I do recommend that if you're going to make a blanket or something, choose a nice basic color like black or white, or maybe, a bright color like purple or something to put all your squares together and to do your trim with, because I am going to make a blanket with my squares, okay? And at the end, I will show you how to piece them together in a beautiful blanket. So we're going to begin with a circle. So I'm going to make my slip knot and chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'll put the tail of my yarn over my hook and pull it through and close that up and make that stay knot. If you prefer to use the magic circle or another method to make your circle, you certainly can. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go in, pull up a loop, and chain 1. This gets us up where we need to be. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to make those first loops. So we're going to single crochet in the loop and chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we'll single crochet again and chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we're going to do this till we have 8 of these loops. You'll also notice that I'm stitching over my tail of yarn, and that's so I can close that hole up when I'm done. All right, so single crochet, chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Single crochet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'll do this till I have 8 loops. So I have repeated that, single crochet, chain 6, till I have 8 loops. All right, there's my last single crochet, so I'm going to join to that first single crochet with a slip stitch, and then I'm going to slip stitch in that chain 6 loop. All right, now I'm going to chain 1 and single crochet in that loop. Push that down and chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. All right, now I'm going to go to the next loop and single crochet and chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now I'll go to the next loop and single crochet and chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And we'll go to the next chain 6 loop and single crochet. And so what we're doing is we're making a chain 7 loop in each of our loops. Okay, this makes a nice open 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Makes a nice open center to our square. All right, single crochet in the next loop. Let me show you how that looks. Like a big loopy flower. So I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need to do 6, 7, and 8. So we've completed those 8 chain 7 loops. Here's our last one. We're going to join to that first single crochet with a slip stitch. Then we'll slip stitch in that chain 7 space and chain 3. And now we're going to form the corners and the sides of our square. So we're going to stitch 2 double crochets. Our chain 3 counts as 1, and we stitch 2 more and chain 2. Now we're going to stitch 3 more double crochets in that same chain 7 space. And this is going to make our first corner. We'll chain 2, go to the next chain 7 space and stitch 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Now we'll chain 2, go to the next chain 7 and stitch another corner. So 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. And chain 2. Now we have 2 corners. Now you will notice it's a little bit wonky. It's not perfect, but don't panic. Once we get this row and the next one down, it'll look a lot crisper. All right, so we did our corner, we chained 2, and we'll stitch 3 double crochets in the next chain 7 loop space. And chain 2. All right, so now we'll go to the next one and stitch a corner. 3 double crochets, 1, 2, 3, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. Chain 2 and 3 double crochets in the next chain 7 space. My yarn's chasing me over here. And chain 2. So let's take a look at this real quick. There we go. A little snag there. And you'll notice it's not real crisp just yet, but don't panic, it will be. All right, so we have another corner and another side to do, and then we're going to join back to our chain 3. I stitched that last corner and that last side. Here's my chain 2. We're going to join to the chain 3 with a slip stitch. Then we're going to slip stitch in those next 2 double crochets. And now we're going to slip stitch in this chain 2 space and chain 3. And so all we're going to do for row 4 is just repeat what we did. We're going to do a corner, and then we'll place 3 double crochets in the 2 chain 2 spaces in between. All right, so we're going to stitch our corner, 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. 1 and 2 and 3. All right. So now we'll chain 2. We'll go over here to the next chain 2 space and stitch 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2. We'll go to this next chain 2 space and stitch 3 double crochets. So we're basically ending these 2 rows, or stitching these 2 rows, similar to a basic granny square. All right, so this brings us to our corner, and we'll stitch those 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2 and 3 double crochets. Chain 2, and again we'll stitch 3 double crochets, chain 2 in these 2 chain 2 spaces, and chain 2. And chain 2. Okay, and see how that's making that just a little bit more crisp. All right, so what we did here, we're going to do on these last 2 sides and then join back to our chain 3. I have completed all the way around. I've got my 4 corners, and I've got 2 sets of 3 double crochets on the sides with chain 2s in between. Here's my last chain 2. I'm going to join to my chain 3 with a slip stitch. Then I'm going to slip stitch in those 2 double crochets, and then slip stitch in the chain 2 space and chain 1. And what we're going to do for the last row is put that even row of single crochets all the way around. So we're in this first corner, so we're going to stitch 2 single crochets. 1, 2, we're going to chain 2 and place 2 more single crochets in that corner. And that's going to give us a nice corner for our square. Now what we're going to do is we're going to place a single crochet in the 3 double crochets. Then we'll place 2 single crochets in the chain 2 space. 1 single crochet in each of the double crochets. 2 single crochets in the chain 2 space. And repeat. 1 single crochet in the 3 double crochets, 2 single crochets in the chain 2 space, oops, and then 1 single crochet in those last 3 single crochets on that side. All right, so now you can see how that really crisps that up and makes it nice and straight. All right, so then we'll come to the other side and we're at our next corner. So we'll stitch 2 single crochets, chain 2 and 2 single crochets. And again, this gives us a nice crisp corner. And then we'll just repeat across here what we did across here. 1 single crochet in those 3 double crochets, 2 single crochets in the chain 2 space, and repeat across. Two single crochets, and then 1 single crochets in those next 3 double crochets. So now we have 2 sides completed with our single crochets. And then we'll repeat this on these last 2 sides and join back to our first single crochet. I've completed those last 2 sides. I'm going to join to that first single crochet with a slip stitch. Whoop. Cut our yarn, and then we'll go in that next stitch and pull that loop to the back of our square and tie off to the back, and this will give us a nice look on the front of our square. Let me turn this over, and we'll go ahead and weave this end in. And now I'll have 2 of the granite squares I can set aside for my blanket. But again, you don't have to make a blanket. You can make whatever that you want to with your squares. There are tons of things that you can make. All right, now it's not perfect. When I mean perfect, I mean it's not perfectly shaped. That's what happens sometimes with squares. And if you want it to be perfect, we need to block it. So here's the first one that I did. I'm going to take the pins out. And this is a blocking board that I bought at Michael's several years ago. And it has squares on it that mark off the inches. Okay, and so you can take your square and make sure when you use pins that are stainless steel. If you use some of the old metal or steel pins, they can rust onto your project. Okay, so I'm going to mark this one at this corner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and put this one at this corner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, put this one at this corner. And then put this one at this corner. Then you can take the other corners, or edges I should say, not corners, and pin those down. Okay, if it's not sitting as pretty as you want, you can add more pins. Like we've got a loop here, so I might want to pull that down. And when I block squares, I do not use any starch or anything. All I use is water. And I take my blocking board, it's made of sponge. If you don't have these, you can use a piece of cardboard, you can use a paper towel, not a paper towel, you can use a cloth towel and pin it to that, or just lay it flat on a flat surface. And again, you do not have to block your squares. It just helps when putting them together if they're all a uniform size. All right, so then I just take my spritz water, and I didn't bring it in here because I didn't want to make a mess all over my computer and things, but I just spritz it with plain water. I usually pat it down with a towel to make sure there isn't any extra water, and then I just set this on my dryer. the next time I do a load, it will get warmed from the bottom and help it to dry. If you don't have your own dryer, say you live in an apartment and you have a laundromat or whatever, you can set this in the window where the sun comes through, or just set it in a safe place where it can dry, maybe next to the heater or something like that. But don't get it too close. You don't want it to catch fire or anything. But anyway, this is our Garnet January square. This one is blocked and this one is being blocked. And you can get these blocking boards at Joann's. You can get them at Michael's. And I've also seen them at Hobby Lobby. But again, you don't have to have a blocking board to block your squares. All right. Next month, in February, we'll be doing the amethyst square. Now remember, make 2 at least.